Operation Market Garden, a bold Allied offensive in 1944.
Following the successful Normandy landings in 1944, the Western Allies broke through German defences and reclaimed large areas of occupied territory by late summer. Seeking to expedite the end of the war before Christmas, High Command devised a bold new operation. Known as Operation Market Garden, this offensive was a combined airborne and armoured assault. The British 1st Airborne Division, the 1st Polish Independent Parachute Brigade, and the American 82nd and 101st Airborne Divisions were tasked with securing strategic locations in the Netherlands, particularly key bridges. Meanwhile, the British X-Corps was to advance rapidly across these captured bridges and push into Germany from the north. One of the critical objectives assigned to the 82nd Airborne Division, under the command of Brigadier General James Gavin, was the capture of the bridges, spanning the Waal River in the city of Nijmegen. These included both a rail bridge and a road bridge. During the German occupation, these structures had been destroyed but were subsequently repaired by German engineers. For Market Garden to succeed, it was essential that these bridges be taken intact. On September 17, 1944, Operation Market Garden commenced. Upon landing, the paratroopers moved quickly to seize their objectives. The advancing 82nd Airborne prompted the Germans to destroy several smaller canal bridges, although at least one was successfully captured. As the division pushed toward Nijmegen and its vital bridges, progress was temporarily halted due to reports of a massive enemy tank force, rumoured to be 1,000 Panzers, hidden in a nearby forest. This information later proved to be incorrect. Upon entering Nijmegen, the American troops were welcomed as liberators by the Dutch population. However, celebrations were short-lived, as the Germans launched a counterattack. General Walter Model, the German commander, had dispatched reinforcements from the 10th SS Panzer Division to prevent the bridges from falling into Allied hands. The ensuing battle saw the 82nd Airborne struggling to achieve its objective without additional support from British forces, which were not yet in position. On September 19th, armoured units from the Household Cavalry reached Nijmegen, and Generals Gavin and Brian Horrocks conferred on how to proceed. A direct frontal assault on the heavily defended bridges was deemed too costly. Gavin instead proposed an audacious plan: simultaneous attacks on both the north and south ends of the bridge. While British tanks and American paratroopers attacked from the south, another force would cross the Waal River by boat to assault the northern side. The major challenge was that the Allied forces were positioned on the southern bank of the Waal, a wide and fast-moving tributary of the Rhine. To overcome this obstacle, Gavin suggested that paratroopers cross the river approximately a mile downstream in boats, attacking the Germans from behind. Horrocks was skeptical, but with no better alternatives, agreed to the plan, setting the assault for September 20th. At approximately 8:30 the next morning, the operation began. The initial objective was to secure Nijmegen on the southern side of the river. While this was underway, the 3rd Battalion of the 504th Parachute Infantry Regiment prepared for their amphibious assault. Sherman tanks from the Irish Guards and artillery units provided covering fire, while Royal Air Force Typhoon fighters strafed enemy positions on the north bank in anticipation of the landing. Complications arose almost immediately. Reinforcements from the 325th Glider Infantry Regiment, scheduled to arrive from Britain, were delayed by poor weather, depriving the attack of additional manpower. Furthermore, the boats required for the crossing, supplied by British engineers, arrived late due to severe congestion on the narrow supply route known as Hell's Highway. When the boats did arrive, they were disappointing, flimsy canvas and plywood craft more suited for leisure activities than for an amphibious assault across one of Europe's largest rivers. Despite these challenges, the 3rd Battalion pressed forward. Each boat carried 13 paratroopers and 3 engineers. As they entered the water, tanks and artillery laid down smoke screens to obscure their movement. However, disaster soon struck. The men, trained as paratroopers rather than Marines, had little experience with waterborne operations. Many boats became stuck in the river's muddy banks, while others capsized when pushed into deeper waters. The strong current caused several boats to drift off course. Once enough boats were successfully launched, the crossing began in earnest. Unfortunately, the smoke screens dissipated sooner than expected, exposing the paratroopers to intense German fire from machine guns, mortars, and artillery. Major Julian Cook, leading the 3rd Battalion, prayed the rosary as he paddled, setting the rhythm for his men. However, many soldiers were forced to use their rifle butts, hands, or anything available to propel their boats forward. The Germans relentlessly attacked the makeshift flotilla, riddling the boats with bullets and mortar shells. Many men perished in the river, while others desperately bailed out water with their helmets or stuffed cloth into holes to keep their crafts afloat. Of the 26 boats used in the first wave, only 11 made it back for a second trip. Those who reached the northern shore faced additional obstacles. The main German defensive position was a dike at the far end of a full-on 200-yard field. Regrouping, the paratroopers fixed bayonets and charged. After a brief but intense firefight, they secured the position, clearing the way for the rest of the battalion to cross. With the majority of the 3rd Battalion now on the north bank, they advanced toward the railroad bridge, eliminating multiple German positions along the way. Eventually, the northern end of the rail bridge was secured. Meanwhile, heavy fighting continued for control of the road bridge. British and American forces battling street by street and even from rooftop to rooftop, eventually gained control. By nightfall, both ends of the bridge were in Allied hands. In a final act of desperation, the SS attempted to destroy the bridge using demolition charges, but these failed to detonate. Some accounts suggest that Dutch resistance member Jan van Hoof had previously disabled the explosives, though this remains unconfirmed. With the Waal Bridge secured, British tanks were able to cross and move toward Arnhem, approximately 10 miles away. There, elements of the British 1st Airborne Division and the 1st Polish Parachute Brigade were engaged in a desperate battle against German counterattacks. However, instead of pressing forward immediately, The British tanks received orders to hold the bridge at all costs, and no further instructions to advance to Arnhem were issued. This delay, attributed to a combination of approaching nightfall, the arrival of German reinforcements, logistical constraints, and residual enemy resistance in Nijmegen, proved critical. The exhausted paratroopers who had risked their lives for the crossing were enraged to learn that their efforts had not resulted in an immediate push toward Arnhem. During the crossing and subsequent fighting, the 3rd Battalion suffered heavy losses. 134 men, including their attached engineers, were killed, wounded or reported missing, over half the unit. Despite their heroic efforts, the Allies were ultimately forced to consolidate their position around Nijmegen. The British airborne forces at Arnhem, unable to hold out, withdrew southward toward friendly lines. The failure of Operation Market Garden remains a subject of historical debate. Contributing factors include the 82nd Airborne's inability to capture the bridges before the arrival of British armour, the failure to push to Arnhem in time, logistical difficulties, communication breakdowns, and adverse weather conditions. Ultimately, Market Garden did not achieve its objective of a swift Allied advance into Germany. However, the bravery and sacrifice of the men who fought in the battle have not been forgotten. 40 years after the battle, a monument was erected in their honour. In 2013, a 3rd bridge across the Waal River was dedicated, named The Crossing. It features 48 lights, one for each soldier who lost his life in the valiant effort to secure what ultimately proved to be a bridge too far.